Just to give a bit of a background for our decision, which we've announced today, as we all know, Moana Pasifika has been in a distressed state for quite a number of months. The team was up for sale during the back end of last year and went through a sale process. Unfortunately, that process fell through around April this year when we were notified of that process failing. And then we had to step in along with some other parties to help support that team to get through the end of the season. So our thoughts have always been with the players and the fans to make sure this team can stand up as long as possible. Throughout that process, then we kicked off a proposal process to get expressions of interest for parties to have a proposal to take forward the team into 2027 with an initial deadline of the 15th of May. However, unfortunately, through that process, there's been a number of parties that were part of that. And we set some really strict criteria. First criteria really is committed capital to establish the team and to ensure that team could last a key broadcast cycle for the next 4 years. The other key part to that was a viable and sustainable business plan, which was a key component to enable the team to stand up a competitive team as part of the competition, and again to survive through to a minimum 4-year period and in essence perpetuity as part of our licence for Super Rugby. Through that process, there are a number of bids which we're really excited about the level of interest in the competition and parties that are interested in acquiring a licence. However, it really came down to a key criteria of that committed capital and a time frame to establish that capital to stand up a team for next year. We're really thankful for the engagement from NFAT and Minister Peters as part of that process, which came towards the end of that proposal process. However, with our committed timeframes, with a hard stop required as of today to launch the competition and stage the competition for next year, no confirmed capital has arrived at this stage. So we're left in no real position other than to announce that there will be no continuation of the licence for MP for the remainder for 2027. We do want to reiterate we have a long-term commitment to Pasifika Rugby and to a team. We remain completely open to potential or future bids related to a Pasifika team going forward beyond 27. However, just to be very clear, there's not a viable option for a team to be stood up for 2027. So I'll take questions from there.
When you say no capital, so are you suggesting this bid had no capital raised behind it?
In terms for our time frame, there was no confirmation of capital received or dedicated confirmed capital in relation to the team to be stood up for 27.
Was there any money confirmed?
But we did not have any confirmed money other than some support from partners from a commercial arrangement for one of the bids. But from a significant capital perspective to meet the requirements, there was no confirmed capital in that regards.
Is that because the Tongan and Samoan governments and New Zealand government wanted more time?
I can't speak for them exclusively, but I'm aware time is definitely a constraint. And as I said, this process has in essence been running for quite a long time, and those requests for that time perhaps will happen quite late in that process. To be clear, NZR was not part of requesting capital from the governments. That was from the bids themselves. So I can't speak on their behalf on that.
The deadline has been shifted.
Correct.
Several times? Yes.
So the original deadline was the 15th of May. We shifted that multiple times, especially with light of potential support from NFAT and Mr. Peters to try and give that as much time as possible. However, we have a hard stop in relation to the competition. We need to support the current teams, sponsors, booking venues, timetable scheduling. We're at a hard stop, unfortunately, to stand up that competition for next year with our partners in Super Rugby Pacific.
So the deadline was moved. Some might suggest the goalposts have been moved as well. Did you keep asking for higher levels of capital and
No,
confirmation?
that depends on the quality of the business plan presented. And for sure, at NZ Rugby, we've done our due diligence on that business plan and made our assessment on what capital should be required for that. That sensitivity should be performed by all parties. We performed our sensitivity, which was a fair and reasonable sensitivity of what's required capital for a team to be stood up.
Had that increased recently?
Well, our assessment on sensitivity suggests that more capital is required than than that assessment from the parties included. And it was disappointing that those parties didn't do that sensitivity analysis. Pretty standard business approach to work through different risk scenarios on your modelling. So it's entirely reasonable that capital requirements were in excess of the original view.
So given the lack of capital, did it actually become quite a straightforward decision in the end?
Yeah, in the end it's actually a really, well, it's not never a straightforward decision in relation to a team. We have all intent purposes to try and stand this team up for the long term, and as I said before, we remain really open for establishing a team on the right sound commercial footing and standing for the long term. The time constraints just meant that the ability to stand up a team, in essence, a less than 2 month window with established capital, a viable commercial plan, lined up sponsors to support that business case, meant that it made it very difficult to grant a licence to a team that didn't have that capital in place.
Had that bar been raised this week? Had an ultimatum been issued
well,
this
in the
week,
end, it's up to the parties with the bid to come up with the credible and sustainable capital for a bid.
And they haven't done that?
No, we've not seen that capital. But in essence, any business or any bid, you should be doing a sound commercial analysis of your risk to your bid. And our analysis of that would suggest that more capital would be required than was initially proposed.
Could you say how many bids were serious?
I'd say there are 4 serious bids, but in terms of standing up bids for 2027, it was left down to one real bid opportunity for 27, and that was the bid we're working with MFAT and partners to try and get over the line. But as I said, as of today, there's been no confirmed capital in relation to that bid.
Now, you're the finance person as such, but we have to ask, what about the players, the staff? There's a number of players who I guess have got nothing for next year, and so.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, our thoughts have always been with the players. We stepped in with the current Moana Pasifika situation and have directly funded the team through to the end of July to support the players through that process. That was us directly funding a private enterprise which was unable to meet its obligations. So from an NZ Rugby perspective, our thoughts have always been with the players and looking after them as best we can. We also have to take into account the wider stakeholders of NZ Rugby. We don't have an empty checkbook. We've got a provincial union, a community to support. We have the game to support, and we don't have an open checkbook to support a private enterprise or private teams.
Just confirming that support will end at the end of July.
From an NZR perspective, yes, we're not going any further than that.
You said that some of those bids were keen to take the team into a new market. Can you sort of give the insight into those new markets?
I think some of that might have been reported in the past, but there is obviously the core markets of Samoa and Tonga, and the license, the current MP license, is directly associated with Samoa and Tonga. So hence why this process was the extension of the current license. In future, for a future team, as I said, we remain pretty excited with the amount of bid interest and potential options for a team that could be somewhere within the Pacific Rim. So I won't comment on those specifically for now, but and we remain committed working with MFAT and other parties to supporting rugby in the Pacific and potential teams in the future in line with Rugby Australia and the competition.
Adi Savia was due to come back to Moana Pasifika. Where does he sit now?
Adi is a NZ Rugby contracted player, so he will be back into a New Zealand Super Rugby team. It's up to Adi, I guess, and his team to work out where that is. But Adi remains, obviously, for next year, an NZ Rugby contracted player.
Have you spoken to, or how much conversation has there been with Australia about this team? I mean, I know they may say, well, it's not our problem.
No, to be fair, Australia really let us run the process because it is our licence really in terms of grant as part of their Super Rugby agreement. So they have really, we're just keeping them informed of the process as we've moved along, and they've supported us in terms of us making the right decision for NZ Rugby, for Pacific Rugby and the community.
Was a decision made some time ago that it would be better for everyone, in inverted commas, to have 10 teams rather than 11?
No.
Would Rugby Australia not support 10 teams instead of 11?
No, this decision was a decision made for NZ Rugby for the competition, purely on back to those key aspects of a viable team with a financially viable business plan and committed capital, which was not there. So that led to the decision. There was no pressure from Rugby Australia for us to make that decision.
Does the competition want to get back to 11 or
Oh, I'm
or
sure,
10 teams as possible?
for sure for the competition, future expansion is attractive and is a key part for growing the competition, the commercial value of that competition. But for 2027, that won't be the case.
And it could be a while to, if we see a team from Tonga Samoa back.
Look, I can't put a time frame on it, but if you really step back in essence and look, we want a strong Pacific connection and a long-term viable team based in the Pacific, creating pathways and talent pathways and economic value in the Pacific. To rush forward and establish a team within 4 weeks that in quite essence has considerable cash burn, was not likely to be profitable over a 4-year period at all. Is not the right solution when we want to establish a team, as I say, for perpetuity. So
the Moana Working Party, sure they did everything that was asked of them? Would you dispute?
Oh well, in the end, we did not have any committed capital. That was the fundamental requirement, and we have not had any committed capital as of today still from that process. So, and we thank all the hard work from that team, and we work proactively and significantly with that team and other parties to try and get this over the line. But in the absence of confirmed capital, we cannot take that risk in a competition and to take this forward. I mean, how long do you draw that out for until that capital is committed? We have to, as I said, we have a competition that has to get finalised, and certainty for our sponsors, for broadcast, for a whole lot of reasons why we need to get that completed. And unfortunately, without that capital, we've got to draw a line in the sand at some point to move forward.
Do you see a negative message to the young Pacifica players out there, do you feel?
No, I think we've got to stand back and go, there's actually a lot of positive opportunities. Within New Zealand Rugby, we're really committed to Pasifika. From a governance perspective, we've got two board members. The Pasifika Council just been admitted as a electing council into rugby, so with 2 votes, and we do significant work in the Pacifica community for the game, and we remain committed to a future opportunity in Pacifica rugby, but one that will also develop credibly in a business plan and a financial pathway to create long-term pathways and success in the Pacific itself, not playing games within New Zealand.
Based on the numbers you've seen and the modelling you've seen, are you confident that something could be stacked up for 2028?
There was actually a number of bids, and to be honest, you could take parts of all of them and put it together and come up with, over time, a compelling case. And I think that's how we have to look at this going forward. So there is a commercial model there, but of particular interest would be a partnership with government and private. That would be ideal. Government backing alone, while supportive, can never be guaranteed forever. So you really want a mixture of government and private ownership or support into a team, and particularly of support that can last longer than a cycle. That's for sure.
NZR had to help bail out the Hurricanes last year. Are any other teams in strife?
No, not that I'm aware of at the moment, no.
They will run at losses though, some of them?
I haven't got the final outcome of that, but I can't comment any further until I have the final P&Ls.
Just back to those markets, there was reports of bid they wanted to move the team to Hawaii. Was that a legitimate bid?
It was a legitimate bid, but it wasn't for 2027. So our primary focus was looking for a 2027 bid and the extension of the current licence. Any bid to another location like Hawaii would require a new licence, and then a contemplation for Rugby Australia, ourselves, and the competition.
Did you get a feeling among the other New Zealand franchises that should a team end up in, a Moana type team end up in Hawaii from 2028, that would be something that the other franchises would be interested in?
We haven't explored that any further than our key focus on just 2027 initially. But as we look forward for the future expansion of the competition, no doubt we'll have conversations what that would look like.
New Zealand Rugby going to do their best to facilitate Pacifica players into other franchises and ensure they that?
I mean, we'll facilitate the best we can. That's obviously up to the individual teams and franchises on their rosters and how that looks. A number of the players are NPC players, so we'll form part of that competition, which obviously we fundamentally support. However, that will be dependent on the super clubs and their rosters as they stand now.
Some of the players have already been put on NZR retainers. Are you,
No, I can't comment on individual players on that.
The NRL journalists are giving me heaps and want me to ask about, there's now a whole heap of players potentially available. Would NZRs thinking, we don't want to lose these guys to potentially NRL clubs or to anything like that?
No, we want all our players to stay up from the rugby community. And our thoughts have always been with the players and stand up as much as possible. You know, first and foremost, you know, we just had a team decision point here today, and the players hopefully they the best they can find a role in another team. But you know, I can't comment any more than that, to be honest.
did other New Zealand teams want Moana to survive?
We haven't actually spoken directly to other teams. To be honest, we've just assessed this directly on the case that stands in front of us on Moana Pasifika, and the key criteria which we set out in terms of, you know, back to the key points: is it commercially viable? Does it have a sustainable business plan, which we met as part of this process?
Was this venture a failure?
Well, I guess if you don't try something, you will fail anyway. So we have to remember that New Zealand rugby and a lot of other parts of Pasifika are fundamental in establishing this team in the first place. So, you know, we're to demonstrate the need that we are very committed to Pasifika and standing up a team. You know, we stood on a limb to set up this team with a number of other parties. So the fact that we had, you know, circa 4 years of a team competing in Super Rugby, we still see that as a success. For sure, we would want this team to compete for longer, and we'll try and do that in the future. But if you don't try, you'll fail. So, you know, I don't think we should be knocked for that.
You're quite new to the job.
Yes.
Have you come in here and opened the books and gone, geez?
Look, as anyone new, the new CFO in the organisation, you always want to lift the lid on the organisation. For sure, there's opportunities in rugby for us across the system to be better. There's lots of good things about rugby, the revenue generating power of the All Blacks, the breadth of the game in the country, the deep grassroots connection. No other sport has that kind of connection within the community, deep down to that fundamental grassroots level, which gets everyone excited and up for a challenge for the long-term sustainability of the game. So, no, I remain excited about all those opportunities.
Are you having to make some big calls around money at the moment? And second question, this is an overarching question, is this with a view to getting out of the Silver Lake deal or buying back the Silver Lake?
The first part of it, we always would look at creating a sustainable organisation, Sav. Like any good organisation, we have to take that approach. And so we look through a cycle as well and take a long-term view of the game, because we have obligations to really support the community game. You know, we put $40 million into the community game annually. So, you know, we've got to take that into account about thinking about our role to support that game. But for sure, you know, we'll have aspects that we'll have to look at closely for long-term viability and sustainability of Rugby Inc. in New Zealand in total. Silver Lake, just to echo what David said earlier, you know, they're a great partner, and you know, we're not actively doing too much at that stage at the moment, but we always remain in good dialogue with Silver Lake overall.
With a view long-term to buying back?
Look, to be decided in time.
Happy? Cool. Thanks everyone.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for fronting.
No worries. Thanks, Ed.